that we originally were going to do at one of the classes, but it's been changed twice, so we're doing it here. But I noticed that most people here are experienced enough people that probably have already put many PL259s on the cables, etc. So, but I will go through it anyway.
There's more than one way to skin a cat, and it's good to keep your options open.
What's that?
There's more than one way to skin a cat.
Oh,
There's good ways to
absolutely,
keep your options
absolutely,
open.
because I certainly do not do it the way they recommend you do it in the AARC handbook. Any site where it says that you prepare the cable and then you pre-tin the braid before you put the connector on, I've never done that because it just doesn't seem to work for me.
It's hard to go on.
Yeah. Anyway, first thing that I want to mention is about soldering on connectors, etc. Soldering irons are hot. They can give you a nasty burn, so treat it with respect. Not only the soldering iron, but also solder that drops off of it on your feet, and you have no shoe and socks on. I tell you, you peel that little piece of solder off of there, the skin comes with it. So be very careful. Also, the types of solder. Nowadays, there's various types of solder. The solder that we use and that we're familiar with is the ordinary standard Kester 3070 or 4060 with a flux built into it. Nowadays, there's a lot of talk about lead-free solder. I'm not going to say too much about it. Officially, you're supposed to be aware of it. You're supposed to not use leaded solder, but I can tell you one thing. I have tried lead-free solder and it is garbage. Probably works in industrial applications where they have specific types and special procedures to apply it, but it is not nearly as good as regular. I doubt it. I highly, highly doubt it if they use that lead-free solder in the space industry, because I don't think it's very reliable. Anyway, the regular solder that we use is this type. It's called the Kester SN63PB3070. The 63 is the percentage of the one material, I think it's zinc or whatever.
Lead and tin.
And the other tin, and the other one, the PB, is lead. So it's an alloy of two different materials, and they reached, I presume, these percentages to come to a point where it is fairly easy to melt the solder, and when it solidifies, it's still strong enough. And also, you should use solder that has a flux inside of it. There's a center core, and that has the flux inside of the solder. And it is a non-corrosive flux. Once you have done your soldering, you will see, especially on the PL259, that you get this brown gook on the outside. When you're done the soldering, leave it alone. Do not try to wipe it off because it's kind of fluid yet, it's sticky, so just leave it sit there. Once the connector or whatever it is that you soldered is totally cooled off, you can just take a little screwdriver or whatever, a metallic piece, and you just tick on it, and you wipe it, and it just jumps off of it because it's then hardened and it does not stick to it, it jumps right off. Well, you can leave it on there too, because it is it's non-conductive, but especially on the center pin, I always clean off the center pin. Why have that stuff on there? Also in solder, there's numerous sizes, I'm sure. This is the size that I always use. It's 1.5 millimeter or 0.059 inch. It is a very convenient size that you can use on integrated circuits. You can use it on plugs, even for fine soldering. So it's a nice common size. You can pass it around. Everybody has seen that, I'm sure. And we also have the thin kind that you would use on very small integrated circuits, or thin wires, or something when you want to solder something on your super duper box when you open it up. This one it's the same alloy. It's tin 63% and lead 37%, but it is 0.75 millimeter or 0.030 inch. And really it is the kind of solder you use when you are soldering integrated circuits or the sockets for integrated circuits, a lot easier. And it too has the flux right inside. It's actually a tube with the flux inside here. I always use that too when I solder copper tubing for my water line, believe it or not, because I hate to use that solder paste that you put on there. Never, ever, 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 again, never, ever, ever, ever do you solder using that acid type solder paste that you use in copper tubing, because it is extremely corrosive. It will stay on the material that you have in soldering, and over time it will literally corrode it, maybe even make it disappear type of thing. If you do use it for whatever reason, maybe not for electronic purpose, but soldering something that you have to use, make sure when you're done, take a cloth that you make good and wet under the tap and wipe that stuff off of there, so the acid on it is gone. As a matter of fact, when I solder a water line, copper water line, I always go over it with a wet rag and take that acid stuff off of there. You've seen the installation with water copper pipes that they haven't whited off, the connections that you soldered, they're all green, and that is all from that stuff. So,
did I hear you say, right, you use the regular solder here for doing your water pipes?
I do. Yeah, oh yeah.
With the acid core flux?
No, that's not acid core flux.
No,
That's
really just regular.
the regular
Wasn't
flux.
flux.
The regular flux. I use it
No
works
leaks?
perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
How come they use the other stuff then? How come plumbers use that other stuff?
You know what? They wipe the pipe with a little brush in that acid stuff and
Yeah.
just stick it together.
I think it just cleans it.
It cleans it and maybe a little faster. But you know, in everything else, especially in copper tubing, the secret is cleanliness. Cleanliness. Take a fine piece of, what do you call this
Scotch
again?
brite.
You know, this
Every
stuff,
cloth, whatever it is.
or finer.
Every cloth,
I put
just
a
like
pipe either between my knees or in the bench, and I put this on it, and I go like that, and I turn
Make it shine.
and then from the bottom, and when it's perfectly shiny, you put your solder paste on it if you use that. If not, I just put the component, and even I do the inside of the fitting. If you have a joiner or an elbow, I do the inside of the fitting with a piece of very fine sandpaper like this. That's part of my soldering kit, sandpaper. When it's clean, you wipe it off with a piece of cloth that's clean too. Put it together, you heat it up, and you use a regular caster with a solder with the flux inside, and it soaks it in there just like that. Works like a charm. So you don't have to use that paste.
Yeah.
I have used it just in extreme cases. Okay, so,
And I've done it too, and it works.
yeah. Soldering electronics, use only flux core solder. Never use the acid type. Okay, from the soldering now we go to the various types of connectors. I did bring some, and at the course I always, where I talked about connectors and feed lines, I brought the various types of connectors. We all are familiar with the regular PL259, the UHF connector, and we also remember, I hope, that UHF does not mean ultra high frequency. The UHF means union high frequency. That was a designation given to it by the military, absolutely nothing to do with UHF frequencies. Union high frequency, that's what it stands for.
That finally makes sense, because for years I've always wondered why they would call that a UHF connector when it has terrible loss,
Yeah.
and the VHF connector that has a low loss.
It's just an industrial term. Has nothing to do with UHF frequencies.
Interesting.
When you solder a connector on a piece of cable, what's the first thing you're going to do? The absolute first thing that you're going to do. Right on. Take the barrel off the PL259, stick it on the cable, and forget about it.
In the right direction.
In the right direction. Well, I hope that everybody's smart enough to do that. But I tell you, there's been a few times that I forgot to do this in the very beginning. And I only had to do that 2 or 3 times, and from that moment on, never again. You put this on first. Now, in this case, it really wouldn't matter because there's no connector on the other end. So when I put the first one on, I said, oh shit, I forgot it. I can just still put it on from the other end, but normally you may not be able to do that. So that's the first thing you do, put that on there. Okay? All right, we'll come to that later on too. If you have a smaller cable like RG58, whether it's RG58 GU or XU or whatever it is, as long as it is the cable designated RG58, you cannot, well you can, but you don't use the PL259 as it is. You need an adapter to make up for the size of the cable. I got a piece of RG58, or two pieces actually, and you can see that this thing here slides on it, and there's very little play, and that's the way it should be. So I've seen people have an RG58 cable on a PL259 like that without an adapter. Well, it's just not going to work. Not going to work.
There's different size reducers too.
Mm-hmm.
There's a different size reducer.
Yeah, there are two different kinds. There's the one for RG58 in general, and there's the one for RG59, which is the cable industry cable, the 75
Or
watt
50,
cable.
or 8X.
Or 8X, yeah. I'm not even sure if the 8X is the same size as the 59.
Yeah,
I think
it
they're very,
They're
very
not.
close.
I have both at home and they don't fit.
No.
Yeah, okay, so you do, I think I brought one. Oh, that is also,
Some people drill them out to make them fit, but it weakens the connection.
I was just getting to that point. You have to be very good.
oh, if you want to drill it out, you got to be very careful. You better have a good vise. Because it really, really, well, I do have one in here somewhere.
There's lots of
I
lubricants.
think this may be the one. Yeah, this is the one for RG59. See how sloppy it is on here? And it is actually, you can see the difference.
Yeah,
Put them beside each other.
Yeah.
You can see the difference.
You can see
So
the ones I modified too, and I do.
make sure you use the proper one. It can make all the difference in the longevity of the cable with the connector, and also in its operation. It'll be a lot better. Also different connectors. There's a lot of connectors being used in commercial use, and I hope that in amateur radio use, especially for UHF and higher frequencies, that you use the N-type connector. N-type connector is a connector that is a truly 50 ohm connector, because the actual connector is only the barrel on the inside and the center conductor. That is a truly 50 ohm connection. This thing has nothing to do with the impedance of the cable. It's strictly there for size and that you can tighten it properly. As a matter of fact, the inside is nothing else but a BNC connector without the barrel. I'm not sure, I don't think I have a BNC connector with me, but if you have a female BNC connector, you can push that right on here and it fits like a glove. And it makes a perfect connection.
Okay.
So the N-type connector is a BNC connector with a large size so that it can go with the cable. There's a number of different types of BNC connectors. The ones that you put on yourself, of course even the crimpons you put on yourself, but like this type is a solder-on type, and it has various parts. And there is an order that you put these parts together. Again, the first thing you do is take this barrel and slide it on the cable. Okay?
In the right direction.
In the right direction. Unless you have a cable with no ends, then you can just revert back to it. Then you prepare the cable so that the braid folds over, in this case on this end here, which is square, because on the other end there is a rubber gasket which is actually flanged at an angle. Pass that around, you can see that. I'll take these out, John. And that fits inside here, and then once that is in, the cable is in here with that part and the little rubber gasket in it, there goes a metal ring on top of it, and then this end goes on there so that it slides over the metal ring and compresses the rubber gasket, and it becomes a waterproof connector.
Right.
Okay? However, even though it's a waterproof connector, I would never put it on an antenna up in the air without taping it up to waterproof it even better. It does work, I know, because if you look at this cable that I brought especially, see how green this thing is? So it's been outside, water has been over it, but when I take it apart, see how nice and shiny it is?
Oh,
Pass it around, John.
yeah.
And it's still nice and shiny on the inside. So it is indeed a waterproof connector, but that still really should have been taped off.
Yeah. Very good.
There is a manufacturer, and I don't know who it is. They make a connector that you put on like a PL259. This is, and it has the center pin on it already. No, the center pin also solders on, but you put this kind of together like a PL259 on a cable of RG213, and while you have this on there, then you just screw this end on there and it is complete. And the pin, the N-type connector pin, is then at the right position, because if that pin sticks out too far, it's no good. Because the female connector has 4 little blades, and I should have a female connector with me. And this is all in preparation of, well, there's one on the cable itself there. If the center pin of the connector sticks out too far, and you put it on the female connector, there is a ridge on here, and you can see it better, right, this ridge here, that sticks out too far. It's going to push on those female blades, which are 4 little blades, and if you push too hard and you're going to tighten the connector, you spread them apart, and if you're unlucky, one of these little blades breaks off, falls inside the connector and shorts out. And then it's up to you to troubleshoot it and find out what happened with your cable that has a VSWR from here to 100 years. So you got to be careful with that. As you can see in this cable, here's the female and this is the male. When I press it in there, it only goes so far. It can't go any further. With a PL259 there usually is enough play there, and it's only a fixed length, but this one is not. And you can imagine if you have that on there and you're going to force it and you're going to twist it and you turn this, you see the center conductor, these little blades can come apart. This is not properly installed, by the way, because the bottom part of the center pin should be touching the insulation there. There should be no bare center conductor visible.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So that actually sticks out a bit too far. So you got to be very diligent when you put connectors on. The PL259 is the most forgiving type of connector to put on. Of course, you got to make sure you put it on right. Another very important tool before you put connectors on, and when you're in the process of putting connectors on, is your trusty digital ohm reader. Because when you have prepared a cable and you put the connector on before soldering it, you put this in the ohms position and you go between the center conductor and the shield to make sure there's no short in the cable. And first of all, you check to make sure the cable is not shorted to begin with, which it likely is not if it is a new cable or a half-decent cable. But when you put that connector on before soldering it, measure between the shield and the center conductor to make sure there is no short there. Because once the connector is soldered on, you know, you're going to have to cut it off.
So it's kind of like measure twice, solder once.
Measure 3 times, solder once. Yes. And, well, you saw that connector there, how the braids is folded over, the barrel there.
Yeah.
All it takes is one of these tiny little strands to stick up, and you push the connector on, and it shorts to the center conductor. So very important, don't forget that. This meter, by the way, was bought at, oh, what is it called? They have them in the States, these stores. Harbor Freight
It's their color.
on special for $4.25. And it measures AC, DC voltage up to 1000 volt. Well, AC is up to 750 volts. It has a position that measures batteries. It gives you it measures the voltage and the current as well. DC amps from 200 microamps up to 200 milliamps. There's a 10 amp position. It tests transistors. It has the gain position. Tests diodes. Resistors from 200 ohms, well, not from 200 ohms, that's the lowest scale, up to 2 mega ohms. For $4.25, nobody cannot afford not to have one of those meters, you know?
They had those in the pawn shop a while ago. They're not there anymore.
Oh,
They were $9.
yeah.
Made
Well,
in,
I'm sure it's made in Taiwan or China or whatever.
$4 what is it, $4.25?
Yeah, something like
US?
that. US, yeah.
$8 to go get it?
Made in China.
$3 I wouldn't have, $9.
When I visit my son in Grand Rapids, we don't go there too often, but when I do go down, I go to Harbor Freight, and they usually have them on special. So I'll buy 2 or 3.
Yeah.
A couple of them I've given away to young hams who started out. You know, for that kind of money, you cannot afford not to have one. It's not what you call the high-class industrial type tester, and it states it on there too. It says you can only have so many volts on there. Now, don't look at this. I did that. You know, it came apart. I had a poor connection. I didn't have another test lead, so I just put it together with tie wraps. But I hope I know what I'm doing, so I will not get anywhere near there when I do tests. But they work great. They work great. There's 2 types. There's this one, and they got a fairly decent display. And there's the one with the push button, the way you push it to get a nice, beautiful orange backlight under this, so you can use it in the dark. I think it costs $1 or $2 more.
Deluxe model.
So anyway, alrighty. As far as
There's the battery, they actually got they load test batteries. Like for various, they'll actually do a load test on them.
yeah, they come with a battery too, and you can replace the battery. All it takes is take a couple of screws off here, and the whole back comes off. And there's nothing in there. Now it's all one integrated circuit with a bunch of smaller.
No, the nice thing is when you do the battery test mode, it actually load tests the batteries.
Yeah,
good ones
that's
don't
right,
do that.
it does. Yeah, when you have in the battery test position, this one here, it says 1.5 volts should show 4 milliamps. If it is less, like 3.6, 3.7, the battery is really no good anymore. You should replace it. Okay, so we had the N-type connectors. There are B and C connectors. Again, you can go this one around. That too has a specific way of putting it together. When you have a connector that you never use, study it. There usually is only one good way to put it on the cable, and everybody should be smart enough to be able to figure out which is the right way to do it. Because if you put it on wrong, and you can do that before soldering it, you will find out it doesn't quite fit. You had no problem putting that end connector together up on the antenna for the digital radio.
Crimp on one?
Yeah, no. So, more and more now crimp-on connectors are being used because it is fast. With the proper tool, it makes an excellent connection. And okay, let me put this back together before it looks all so nice for demonstration, so I want to keep it that way. Oh, and another thing with N-type connectors. When you put an N-type connector, female and male together, you push it on and you turn the barrel, but you hold the connector. Again, for the same reason, you do not want to turn this, because if the pin is a bit farther out than it should be, again, those 4 little blades on the female connector can spread apart and create a short. So you hold the connectors and you only turn the barrel. And inside the barrel of the male, there's a nice red rubber gasket. And again, that seals this part and that part, and therefore makes it also a watertight connector.
That's the gasket you handed around?
What's that?
Is that the same gasket that you handed around?
Yeah, well, that is on the inside the gasket. But this gasket sits really tight against this female connector, and that prevents it from water getting in there. So, but I would still always put waterproofing around. Let's see now. Well, there's many other connectors. There's also a miniature, what they call a miniature PL259, which is this kind. It looks like exactly like a PL259, but it is a small one. A lot of Motorola radios now use that connector on there.
SMT? SMT?
UHF.
No, it's miniature UHF, that's what they call it. It looks like a PL259, except it's maybe, what, quarter the size.
TNC,
No, it's not TNC.
is that in between?
TNC is a BNC with a threaded barrel. BNC stands for, anybody know?
British National.
Bayonet, I forget the middle one, and the C is console.
Yeah. Bayonet, Nielsen, and Consulman. They are the two gentlemen who invented that connector. And they also invented the N-type connector, but they made it specifically for RG213, RG214. It's just bigger and more robust. Remember I said earlier, the inside is really a BNC connector? BNC connectors and the Type N are the only two connectors that we normally use that are truly 50 ohm impedance. The PL259, I don't know exactly what the impedance is, but it's not 50 ohm. And for HF, and even including kind of for 2 meters for local stop repeaters, you can safely use the PL259. But if you're seriously into DX work, reach signal, EME, etc., you should use N-type connector.
Question, is that a DIN connector or just a European version?
No,
of
this is look very close, Dave, it's also an N-type connector.
Yeah, it looks similar, but it's not
Yeah.
split, like, okay.
No,
it's
it's not
different.
split.
Okay.
This is a commercial cable, it's Superflex. Okay, Superflex cable, very expensive. They come pre-made like this. They have not only heat shrink tubing, but on the inside of the heat shrink tubing is a special glue. When you heat it up, the glue literally glues itself. This is a truly waterproof cable.
Could you please tell me, it'll scare me, what that particular cable would cost at the regular prices?
You know, I honestly don't know, but I can make maybe kind of half-educated guess, and I would say you probably pay 50, 60 bucks for that cable.
That's all?
I think you're near the bottom end.
Well, this is a Superflex cable. It's not what you call a phase stable
Oh, you
cable.
mean just the cable without the connector?
No, the cable with the connectors. That's probably 50, 60 bucks. If you buy them not in a single unit, if you probably buy 10 or 20 or 100 of them, you may get it for.
That's actually closer
I
to a
thought
hard
the
line
connectors
than to
were
a
50 to
coax, isn't it?
35 bucks each.
I'm sorry?
I thought just the connectors are between 50 and 35
No,
bucks each.
not in mass use.
Several years ago, I remember seeing a standard end connector, silver plated,
Yeah.
22 bucks.
Yeah, they have become a bit cheaper now. But in the commercial industry, like this connector here, somebody looked, I think Bob, you looked at it. This is for a 7/8 inch helix.
I was looking at that and
This is a connector which is an N-type connector. And again, if you look at the inside, the female part, the pin, consists of 4 blades. And this you do not take apart because this one is especially made so that you prepare the 7/8 inch hardline cable, the Andrews LDF50A, and you prepare the center conductor, and when this screws on there, it pushes on there, this center pin goes inside the center pin on the hardline, and you got a perfect connection. So this, you don't have to worry about this anymore, you have no pin.
That's a physical connection, that's not soldered.
No, that's a physical connection. And you can see that is kind of a spring-loaded thing that pushes really in the inside connector.
What is it? Yeah.
And this is all waterproof. It's got a special ring that I'd have to demonstrate to put that together, but I'm not going to bother with that. Here's a special spring that goes on it as well, that sits over the groove of the LDF 450 or 550. That's where the connector cannot come off. Connector like that is easily, if we were to buy a single one, you probably pay close to $80. There was a time, about 20 years ago, these connectors were not as nice as this. You had to put the center connector onto the cable yourself, either screw it in or solder it in. They were about $100 a piece. So,
Hams used to make connectors for 7/8 solder line.
what's that?
Hams used to make their own connectors.
Yes, yeah, some of them did, that's right, I have one here. This is the type that you put the center conductor inside, the pin inside the center conductor, you screw it in there. That's an older style.
They used to make them out of a can, like it would be like a.
Well, some made it out of a piece of copper tubing that happened to fit the outer conductor, and some of them used part of a PL259 actually at the end as well. So yeah, some hands used to make it themselves. I was lucky enough because of my profession. I had, well, you know, you got a bunch of them for your stuff. Yeah. So
They fall off the truck.
yeah. Okay, again, here we have RG213. We used to have RG8, and I'm not up to soldering yet, we may not even get there, but this is important too. We used to have in the old CB days and the early ham days, we used to have RG8. Great cable, except the ultraviolet light deteriorated the outer jacket. So if you had it on the tower for 10, 12 years or maybe even less, this outer jacket would become porous and it would attract water, etc. So the new cable like this, it's called RG213, it's actually nicely written on here, it will resist ultraviolet light, so it is a perfect cable to be used outdoors. Also, this has a polyethylene dielectric on the inside, which is it's really my favorite. I'll cut a piece. That's why you have a nice cutter like this. It cuts the end off nice and square, as you can see.
That's what you should use.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And they're not all that expensive.
No, it's
Even if you
gold.
pay $25 for it, you got it for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
You know,
How much?
maybe $25. I bet you can get that at Harbor Freight maybe for 12 or 15 bucks.
Okay.
No, I'm not kidding. What do you think I paid for this? At Harbor Freight, you can get these as well. They have beautiful crimping tools for Staycon connectors. 12 bucks, you know, and they are spring loaded like this.
Are they on the internet? Harbor Freight?
Mhm.
Are they on the internet?
Yes.
Yeah, they are.
They're not here in the Sioux.
No, but you can order off the.
Oh, you can order it, yeah, they have a pamphlet or whatever catalog, and you can order it
Online.
online in the internet as well.
Harbor Freight.
Canadian Tire was the
Harbor
Lots
OUR.
of cheaper stuff, yeah.
It's the same one, is it?
It's a similar outfit like
Yeah, the one I got
Tractor
is
Supply. The one on the mall there on the west end of town, what is that called again?
Oh, Tool Town?
It's something like Tool Town, but they carry a lot more stuff. They carry heavy duty tools and everything. So, HARBOUR,
Oh, yeah?
or maybe only the O, I'm not sure, since the US it could be just an O, but I think it's OUR. And freight is FREIGHT. Now, why do you think I have two big adjustable wrenches with me? And that is because a lot of connectors, you do need it. This takes two adjustable wrenches to really tighten it. Once you put it together, you don't put this together so that you can take it off and reuse it, and take it off and reuse it 5 or 6 times. We assume that if you put that on a cable, it's going to go on there and it stays on there for a long, long time. And so you tighten that with the two adjustable wrenches. You can tighten it with 2 regular pliers too. I mean, you can use this and hold it here, but you know, whatever you do, the adjustable wrenches fit perfectly on there, and you get a good grip on it. So that's why I have 2 adjustable wrenches always. Other tools, a little pair of needle nose pliers. This is a little bit bigger, this is a little bit smaller. I got a pair at home that is this long. They can come in handy. You know, here's a little bit one that is more like flat. Another very important thing, of course, is a pair of side cutters. Now these are not all that big. I used to cut RG 213 with this until I found this and I gave up on that. One time, I think I shorted something together.
Cut something live?
Fit a thing in here. Yeah, but I did it on purpose. No, I didn't do it on purpose. But it became also a nice wire stripper.
Yes.
Talking about wire strippers again, Harbor Freight. You can get these little wire strippers. This one goes from number 30 up to number 20 AWG, which means American Wire Gauge, right? AWG. I think 12 bucks. You know, for that money you cannot afford to have it. This one is similar, except it goes from number 18 to number 10. So, you know, why fool around with a pair of side cutters? You nick one of the strands or two of the strands and they end up breaking off. Buy the proper tool, you know, it's worth it. These two. I think I got 3 of these from Harbor Freight, probably $6 a piece, you know, you can't miss that.
Cut copper only, yes.
Yeah, oh yeah, you don't use that too. Here's another one for small, very small wires. The proper tools is half the job, remember that. Okay.
Yeah, wait till check.
This is my my arm protector. No, I'm just kidding. It happened to be an old shirt that I had, and I ended up throwing it away. But I saved this because when you're soldering, it is a perfect tool to quickly clean the end of the tip. You know, you hold this, stick the tip in there, wipe it off, and you got a nice clean tip. And especially with soldering irons, like, well, this is a gun. This one is good for from 100 to 140 watts. The preferred tool for putting PL259s on, okay?
Is it soldering gun?
Yep,
Well,
PL259s. The
the
barrel
shield.
with the 4 holes, that takes a lot of heat.
You don't use the iron.
No, you'll never get it good.
Just a piece of cloth, an old shirt. Here's one that is, what, 250 watts? I have it, I really don't use it very much, but, you know, it can solder a lot of things. So this is what I use strictly for putting connectors on. It's fast and it does the job. And you can stick that tip nicely in that hole, heat it up until your solder melts, not just on the tip but also on the metal itself, on the connector, because that indicates it's hot enough. So this is what you can nicely, quickly clean up. You go like that, and it's nice and clean. Ideally, for soldering, and you can do use this for soldering on a PL259, you'd be surprised how hot it can get. This is a temperature controlled station. It's called a Weller WTCP series, and the tips are changeable. You can take this tip off and stick a needle nose tip that is this long, or one that is even heavier than that, so you can adapt your soldering iron to the work you're doing. If it's fine stuff for integrated circuits, I take this tip off and I put another one on. This is temperature controlled. This is magnetic on the end. When it heats up, the magnetism disappears. And inside here is a little switch. Now, shut up, clock. Can you hear it? You hear it click off and on? So when it's in there, the contact is closed, heating it up. As it heats up, the temperature gets warmer and warmer, then at a certain point the magnetism disappears and the switch opens up, turns it off. When it's cooled off to a certain point, the magnetism comes back and it activates the switch and it turns back on. If you have this in your standard and it is turned on, you're constantly, you hear click, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds later you hear click, and that's how it keeps on temperature. These tips from these stations never ever ever use a file in there. You know, with these tips here you can use a file because it is pure copper, these tips on the soldering guns. This one you do not ever put a file in there. You literally rub it either on a piece of cloth or in this case on the sponge. And that's why I have Aunt Jemima with me, because that is a beautiful little container to put some water in. You can turn it upside down, the water doesn't leak out. You go like that and you squirt some water on here, push it down, and it is locked again and closed. And this is where you clean your contact, your tip, and it works great. Now when it's hot, of course, and this is nice and wet, yeah, it gets a little bit of a shock and it may just cool off briefly, but it really doesn't affect it. Great piece, it works off 24 volts by the way, and it's very flexible. Beautiful station. I used to have 3 of them. 2 I gave to my sons, and now I only have the 1. So, another thing about soldering, nobody may have seen this before, but guess what this is? 12 volts.
Okay.
It's the same soldering iron as this. It also has the replaceable tips. It's temperature controlled. You click that on your battery, 12 volt battery, and you're totally portable. I've used that many a time in my work, going out to an M&R tower site where there's no hydro. With the helicopter there, you gotta make a solder connection. That's why we had these in our toolbox. And they're not the cheapest. It's probably about 150 bucks. But if you do it a lot, use it a lot out in the field, it pays for itself in no time. You can imagine how much it costs on a helicopter to go back to the shop to pick up your soldering gun because you forgot it. And then you come there and there's no hydro. So what uses the soldering gun? So it was a standard piece of equipment in our toolbox. Tell you a quick story here. We went to Jeff, I shouldn't have mentioned his name, but anyway, afterwards we all looked at it as a good joke in a way. Jeff and I, we went to Wow at the airport and got on the helicopter and we flew to, I think it was Ojidaki or one of the tower sites. And we get there and Jeff goes like that. Forgot the key for the truck, for the building. So first of all, we took part of the siding, kind of ripped it off. And with the axe that was in the helicopter, we chopped a hole in the wall, stuck your arm in and unlocked the door. And when we left, just put the siding back and you couldn't see there was a hole. So that worked out good. But another time we went with the helicopter and we were in the building, we'd done a job and Jeff locks it up and like, okay, we walked to the helicopter, come to the tower or the airport and we gotta go back to the suit. Jeff goes, where are my keys? Keys were still in the door at the tower site. Luckily, there was the same helicopter, he had to go back because they had a crew at the weather station. They were clearing brush there, and he was going to go back to pick him up, and luckily we asked him to go and buy the other site, so they did. And of course, when they came back, they told John, "Oh, geez, Jeff, we forgot all about it." which was not the case, and then they took the keys to it. So we had our moments there.
Tony, why would it matter why would it matter in a place where you can only get there by helicopter? Why would you need to lock it?
You'll be surprised. You'll be surprised. For the same reason that you lock your truck when it's in the parking, in the driveway, or at the store or whatever.
No, but the only way you can get at that site is by helicopter.
No.
Not so.
You'll be surprised with people on ATVs and in the winter on snowmobiles.
Well, I thought this was way up.
Yeah, it's remote. It's remote. As a matter of fact, at one site we got called out to and there was all kinds of problems. And we had a very high VSWR and the feed lines came out of the building and they went up on the pipe and they went up to the tower. Well, a big black bear had been there. They love that stuff that's on the outside of these cables. And he had literally bitten through the cable. So we had to replace a piece of cable, but before we did that, we went to one of the shops in town and had them make a nice metal trough that we screwed on the building so that the cables were protected. At Warrencliffe we had a tower there for the OPP, there was a cable there coming down, went in the ground over to an M&R shack. Again, a bear had chewed through the cable right at the bottom. So you gotta watch out for that kind of stuff. So. Anyway, another piece for soldering, I use, where did I put it? In here, solder wick. You gotta unsolder a component, a wire, whatever, solder wick works great. You use a new piece, lay it right on the solder where the component is soldered through the board or whatever, and you heat it up and it literally sucks the solder right out of the hole into the braid. You can see how the solder is on there. It sucked it right in there. And once you've done it a few times and you know how to do it, you can suck the solder right out of that hole until the component, literally the wire, falls right out. And you've got a beautiful hole where you can put a new component in or whatever.
These are multi, they're all put together, eh?
Yeah, well, I push them together.
Oh,
They
you
come
push
as
them
they
together.
come as individual pieces, but you can kind of snap them together. And one of them that was empty, I put fine solder on there.
Good.
So I got solder braid and solder right there.
Good.
Okay? But if you don't have it, you can also use the solder extractor pump. You heat it up, you stick that right against it, you go like that, and the vacuum sucks the solder out of the hole. It works good.
Except for poorly made circuit boards where it sucks the island right off.
Yeah. And they work well. And if you've done it enough, you
Oh,
take.
yeah, no island sucks.
Yeah.
If you've done it a lot of times for quite a while,
It just takes-
you unscrew this. Oh, I can't get it out here now. Anyway, I'll take this out, and there's the plier that goes down. But if you take it out, you can see the solder all on the inside. Every now and then you take it apart and clean it out.
There you go.
This is one of the better quality tools. You have also the ones that are all made out of plastic, and they do the job. This tip is made out of Teflon, so it is not really affected by the heat. But the ones with the tools that didn't have this protective sleeve, you sit there, you go like that and punch you in the nose, eh? Because there was no, but this one you don't have to worry about that. It doesn't extend from it. Alrighty, another tool that you should have in your toolkit is a wire brush, small brush. This is brass, and this is steel, and this is just bristle. Things you all need at one time or another. This is a brand new one, I think I only used once. These things are all part of your toolkit. When we go to field day, there really should be a setup like this with it. Here are all these different tips that are available for these temperature controlled soldering irons. Alrighty, that's as far as the cables, connectors, tools is concerned. Oh, here's another one. That's a soldering gun. It's also a weller. It is not temperature controlled, but it is not as heavy as these. It's a beautiful lightweight soldering gun, and it works like a charm. Yeah, works like a charm. Over the years I've accumulated a lot of that stuff.
Power consumption?
One of the most important items in your soldering toolkit is a very sharp knife. It's a must item to have. Never mind your little pocket knife that you have. It's got to be one with replaceable blades. They slice through it like butter, and that's really what you need. So, what I'm going to do, I don't think I'm going to bother soldering it, okay? Everybody here has soldered enough that we don't have to go, I'm not going to waste a connector. But how do I put a PL259 on it? Well, what I do, and this is my personal method, and there are other ones, I hold it kind of like that and say, well, this is roughly where the length of wire I need to come out of this here. So, I'm going to take my nice sharp knife, and I just go like this, right around and around, and I'll cut
You guys want to see this?
through the outer jacket, the copper braid, and the dielectric. Then I grab my pliers here, and if I cut it deep enough, the whole thing comes off. Now, of course, the trick, and that comes after a while with the experience, This cable is old, as you can see, because the center conductor is somewhat eroded. But this one here, as you can see now, we have cut this off and holding it like that. Now that's about right. You know, the center pin could be a bit longer. But now you want the outer jacket to take it off. And let's say we need this much from here to there. But take a little bit more, because you'll be surprised how hard it is to get this screwed on all the way. Don't do what a lot of, and forgive me for that, what a lot of CBers used to do. They cut the outer jacket off about here, take the whole outer jacket off, and when they put the connector together, they got between the end of the PL259 here and where the jacket is, they got a 1/4 of an inch of copper braid showing. It's not good.
No.
It first of all can attract moisture, it will wick in there, and it's not good because you don't have the rigidity. So you remove enough of the outer jacket. I put it about right from this distance here. You take enough of the outer jacket off so that you, I'm going to take my glasses off now. And again, I go around, but now I don't cut quite as deep. Just to score it. That's probably close enough. Don't go too deep, and you can always do it again, okay? Then I'll go like here.
Cut the braid.
And don't go like this, because guaranteed you push too hard. Put your fingers here so that you have a support, and then when you pull down through it here, bingo. And now you grab this cable, either like that or with a little pliers, and you got this piece of outer jacket up. See how dirty this is? That should be shiny copper. That shows you that it is an old piece of cable, even though, well, I took the dishcloth at home and I wiped the dirt off. So it looks nice and clean, but it is an older cable. So that shows you that this had moisture exposure in here at one time. So now we have that PL259, if I see, where did I put it? Right there. And you put the twisting motion, otherwise the braid will push around and down. Also, you make sure you look that there are no single strands sticking up
Whiskers.
and whiskers touching the center conductor. It doesn't on this one. You can see I look over my glasses. So I'll twist this one on.
Yeah.
And now
Work her down, eh?
you put it on here, and that's where you need the handy pliers with the circles on the inside, and you go like that. And I may not even get it on far enough, because I should really have another pair of pliers similar to this to hold this as well. But we'll go far enough, or you go like that. So that you have some leverage there. All right, I measured it pretty close. You can see now, I'll pass this around. Let me just coil this up a bit, makes it easier to go around. See, I didn't put the barrel on.
Yeah.
But the end is clear here, so I wanted to demonstrate that you forget the barrel. Now you know what the conundrum is.
There you go.
And if you look through the,
Distraction.
see how the center conductor luckily ended up right at the end, okay? But now you see through those four little holes here that you see the braid, and you solder all 4 holes. You don't solder just one or one in the opposite side, you solder them all 4. And if you have good clean cable, and another thing that I forgot to mention, but what I always do, and again that is me, some people may not do that, I always grab the connector. This one has
This
this.
has a non-contaminated shield, eh?
Do you need to solder those holes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
it's making a physical connection with the
Yeah.
braid though when you twist
The
it.
braid is not, well, the braid probably is touching a few strands, but the braid is officially not touching the connector. So that's why you have to solder the 4 holes.
If you were to use this cable, you probably want to clean the copper braid.
Well, that's what I'm just going to demonstrate here.
Okay.
This is the way I do it. Wherever the holes are, I take my nice sharp knife and I go like that and clean it by every hole so that you actually see the brass or copper, whatever it is, you see that there. And all 4 of them. And once the connector, and here's the secret, once the connector is hot enough that the solder will melt on the connector itself, it will flow like butter and it makes a good connection.
Onto the braid.
And I have a connector, and I'll show you that was done very well actually. You can see the scratches that I made, that cleans it out. But sometimes I even go on the inside of the hole and I go like that, so that you scratch the inside of the hole as well.
Now you know why you need a replaceable blade.
Yeah, some of those connectors, you tend to really up the
Oh, I have another one. Maybe I left it at home. I thought I had the cable with a PL259 on it.
some sandpaper and a pencil or something.
Well, the one that the UHR or the EMT mail?
No, it has to be one with the,
You have to have a special blade.
Already soldered?
yeah.
Use the regular.
Yeah, it's an arrow one.
Okay, this is a little bit overdone, but it's the proper way. It is soldered all the way around this one, but all the holes are filled.
Yeah.
Okay? And I had one, and I guess I left that cable at home. I had a cable that had a PL259 on it. Yep. Now, this one you can really see it is well done, except the center conductor needs to be redone.
Just so you know
John,
it's not
here you can see
stretched.
that the way it should be done.
That's a problem.
But the center conductor is not properly soldered on that one.
Rub it off with a brush, eh?
Not properly soldered.
No, you can see it's not all the way filled in.
Oh, I see, you want,
Oh, you want it totally closed off, yeah.
you see that? Yeah.
And that's where this piece of equipment comes in handy. Because I tell you, these connectors get really hot as you're soldering them. So you can put that piece of cable in here and tighten it. That's why this got rubber too. And you solder the connector to one hole, and then you twist it, turn it around, and you solder the next hole. But if you've got a cable that's 35 feet long, you got to work with that, of course. Quite often I hold it and solder it, and you know what? You only got 2 hands, so what do you do with the solder? Well, what I do, I grab one and make about 4 windings, and go like this.
Yeah.
So don't do that, because this is lead, okay? But I do it.
Haven't died yet.
No. As a matter of fact, maybe if I stop doing it, maybe something happens. But
You want to withdraw?
ever since I started, and I made my first receiver crystal detector, the cat whisker, I think I was 7 years old, and ever since I've been soldering, and I just, if I had to, I held it in my teeth. So,
Shoot like bubble gum.
yeah. And the secret is that you take this connector and you stick this point in the hole and you heat it up good, and you put a bit of solder on the tip, because you don't get this part of the connector hot right away. So you put some solder on the tip until it gets hot enough, and you will see it flows in there. And then you take the next one and the next one. Don't wait too long in between, okay? So go all the way around.
That's right.
Once the hole is filled with solder and you're pretty sure that the braid is also with solder, you can just wait. Take the time to let it cool off, and when you've done the center tip as well, if it's done properly, the solder wicks itself inside, and that's why you want the tip totally filled. The end of the connector, You don't want the center conductor to stick through it. You make sure it's level or you cut it off afterwards. Make sure that there's no solder on the outside of the connector because it's too thick then. And you put it in the SO239 on the back of your radio and it expands the blades there too. So, and once it's soldered properly, you will find that you have this flux on the outside here, this thin layer of brown stuff. Wait literally until it is cold. And then you take your screwdriver, your knife, you go like that, boom, and it just literally springs right out of there. It does not stick to it. It will stick if it's still hot and you try to take it off with a piece of cloth. Do not do it. Let it cool off.
Excuse me, Mark, I think we've run out of
Yeah.
time.
No, I'm done.
All right.
Wow.
Okay, oh, also a quick one mention here. You can also retrieve connectors. These I didn't do myself, but there are some connectors in here that actually had been used. And some of them, yeah, you use a torch on to heat it up and you pull the cable out
Yeah.
and you clean it up and they're reusable. It takes a little bit of work, but hey, you save $3. You do that 100 times, you can buy a new radio. Okay, that's it, gentlemen.
Do you do the same with the end connectors or? End connectors.